Erev Tov, everyone. It is Wednesday night. It is 8 p.m. here on the east side of the United States, here in the diaspora. This is the Maimon Beit Knesset, therefore it must be the Torah study in depth with yours truly, Rabbi A. Good to have you all here this evening. Okay, so we got Donald in the chat room and a few others watching in the background who have not put anything in the chat room yet, but we know you're there. Okay, I understand that there is a way to get into the chat on your cell phone or your tablet. I'm going to have to find out how that's actually done. Actually, it was Regina who told me about it. So, yeah, so I'll have to figure that out. And then we can pass along so those of you who are watching on your cell phones or your tablets will be able to participate in the chat because it's a good group in the chat room. Okay, so we're continuing our in-depth study of the Torah. We are still in the Sefer Shemot. We are almost to the end of Parasha Mishpatim. We are currently at chapter 23, verse 14, and that's where we left off last week. So that's where we will pick it up tonight. And, of course, we'll start with the study of the Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'asok b'divrei Torah. And we are off and running. Marshall, good to see you. Let's see. Verse 14, 3 times shall you celebrate for me during the year. Pretty simple. Okay, straightforward. Rashi goes on to say times. Actually, it actually says Shalos Reglim Tohog Li Bashana. Reglim, as Rashi says here, it says Reglim times. This word means the same as Pa'amim. Pa'amim. Times. Okay, not really very clear on there. The additional commentary on that says reglim typically means feet. Okay, so has a double meaning, which we find a lot happens in the Hebrew. Let's see, Richard has joined us and Simon has joined us. So they're filtering in slowly. Okay. I'll say. So Rashi goes on to say, similarly, it has the same meaning that you have hit me these 3 times. Look what I got back. Okay, so ki kitanim ze shalos raglim. That you have hit me these 3 times, not these 3 feet. Otherwise, it just would not make sense. 3 feet shall you celebrate for me during the year. That absolutely does not make sense if you translate it that way. That's all Rashi has to actually say about that, and the only thing that the additional commentary just basically translates raglim as usually it means, it means times in this case, but it typically means feet. Okay, so verse 15, you shall observe the festival of matzot. For a 7-day period shall you eat matzot, as I have commanded you at the appointed time of the month. Of the first ripened produce, for in it you left Mitzrayim. They shall not be seen before me empty-handed. The further commentary says, just want to make sure we didn't miss anybody in the chat room. Rashi goes on to say about this, the month of first ripened produce. For in it the crop becomes filled with moisture. The word Aviv is related to the word of father, in that it is the firstborn and the earliest of the month to ripen its fruits. He goes on to say, they shall not be seen before me empty-handed. When you come to be seen before me on the festivals, bring me an olah offering. Okay, further commentary on this one says, with regard to related to Av, it is the firstborn and the earliest month of the ripened fruits. The additional commentary says, according to the first explanation, Aviv, first ripened produce is related to Av, the moisture of the fruit. According to the second explanation, it is related to Av, father. If so, the word shalosh acher, lashon aher, alternatively, which would appear in some editions of Rashi, belong in the text. However, according to one opinion cited by Ibn Ezra, to Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, Av and Av and Av are related words. If so, the words Lashon Hacher are suffleurs. Okay. Verse 16. I thought they would have more to say on this, the Olah offering. But basically, it just references over to Talmud at that point. But which I'm sure it goes into the laws of the Olah offering. So, verse 16, let's get on to verse 16. And the festival of the harvest of the first fruit of your labors that you saw in the field, and the festival of the bringing in at the close of the year when you gather in your work from the field. Rashi goes on to say here, the first fruits of your labors, which is the time of the bringing of the first fruits. That's what I thought. The bikurim, as the two breads which are brought on Shavuot, would permit the new crop to be used for meal offering and the bringing of the first fruit to the temple. As it says, on the day of the first fruits, when you bring a new meal offering to Adonai on your festival of Shavuot. The festival of the bringing in, that is the festival of Sukkot, when you gather in your work, because all summer long the crops dried out in the field, and around Sukkot time they are gathered into the house because of the impending rain. Okay. Really, the only commentary on here has to do with the bikurim, which is, let's see, there it is. Bikurim and Shavuot. Bikurim, 1-3, and Melchot, folio 68b. This proves that the festival of the first fruits mentioned in our verse is Shavuot. So there you have it. Okay. Verse 17, 3 times during the year all your malehood shall appear before the Lord Hashem. Rashi goes on to say here 3 times. I was just saying if the Regliim was in here. No, actually, Pa'amim is actually used. Actually, it's actually Pa'amim in the text of the Torah 4 times. So Rashi goes on to say here, you should 3 times. Since this topic speaks of the 7th year, it had to say that the festival should not be removed from their place. Remember last week, you bite it once, you're going to bite it 10 more times. I don't know what it is about that. Anyway, last week we talked about this, about the 7th year, the Smitha year. That some could interpret it. The reason why it goes into the detail that it goes into in the Torah is because so that people could not say, well, because it is the Shemitah year, then we don't have to do all these other things. Okay, so Rashi is actually hearkening back to that. It had to say that the festivals should not be removed from their place. In other words, you still celebrate the festivals even in the Shemitah year. All your malehood, the males among you. And that's all Rashi has to say about it. So, okay, so as it regards, let me find it here. That's 2. 3 times a year, which I think they forgot to put the note on there. Some editions read Shalos Karu Shalosh. Shel. Itakaru Shalosh Ragliim. That is, 3 festivals should not be uprooted. The meaning, however, is the same. Okay. With regards to not being removed from their place, the additional commentary, Mechilta, since the times of the festivals are given in terms of the agricultural cycle, one could have thought that they are not to be celebrated on the 7th year when agricultural work is forbidden. So again, back to what we were reading the last time we were together, that these things, regardless of the Shemitah year, these things are still going to happen in their proper times. Okay. As it regards, the males among you. The further commentary says, if all your malehood had been addressed to an individual, it would have meant all the males whom you own, slaves or possibly minors, but not free Jewish adults. Rashi explains that since it is addressed to the entire Jewish nation, it is understood as all the males among you. Okay. Verse 18. You shall not slaughter the blood of my offering on Chametz, nor may the fat of my festival offering remain overnight until morning. Rashi goes on to say here that, actually he's got quite a bit to say. You shall not slaughter the blood of my offering on Chametz. Do not slaughter the Pesach offering on the 14th of Nisan until you destroy the Chametz. Okay. Nor may the fat of my festive offering remain overnight off the altar. Rashi goes on to say, until morning. One might think that even if the fat of the offering were on the altar pyre, it becomes disqualified if it remains there overnight. To teach us otherwise, the Torah says, on its fire on the altar all the night. Excuse me. Rashi goes on to say, nor may the fat of my festive offering remain overnight. Remaining overnight can only mean until the break of dawn, as it says, until morning. But he may bring it up from the floor of the temple courtyard to the altar the entire night. Okay, so the further commentary goes on to until you destroy the chametz. The further commentary here says that, again, from Mechilta, the Tractate Pesachim, folio 63a, on of the verse is not to be taken in the literal sense, not on top of. Okay. As Rashi already pointed out, it means that, not until the chametz has been actually destroyed. The further commentary also says regarding, I think it's until morning. Let's see. Nope. Yeah, it says, one might think that even if the fat of the offering were on the altar pyre, it becomes disqualified. The further commentary says, although the verse makes explicit mention only of festival offering, the prohibition against leaving an offering off the altar overnight applies to all offerings. And then, on its fire on the altar all night, the further commentary says, this is from Leviticus chapter 6, verse 2, if the blood of the sacrifice had been placed on the altar during the day, those parts of the sacrifice that must be burned on the altar may not remain off the altar overnight. If they do, they can no longer be brought to the altar. As long as they are put on the altar before the night ends, they are acceptable. One could have thought on the basis of our verse alone that whatever is not consumed during the night is disqualified, even if it was placed on the altar during the night. The phrase all the night in the verse in Leviticus implies, however, that as long as it was on the altar for even the last part of the night, even if there was insufficient time for it to be consumed, it is acceptable. Okay. As it regards remaining overnight can only mean until the break of dawn. The further commentary says that if the portions of the sacrifice designated for the altar were placed on it any time before the break of dawn, the prohibition against leaving them off the altar overnight has not been violated. So as long as you get it on before dawn. Okay. So, I mean, that kind of brings up another question about, okay, what are we talking about? Are we talking about when the sun first breaks? Or are we talking like when we talk about, earliest talid, earliest tefillin, earliest amidah, and so on and so forth, that, at that point where I think it's a person can recognize their fellow whom they do not know well at, 6 cubits or something like that? Or that can differentiate between black and green, I think was another one. So, which one are we talking about here? Okay, so the earliest, verse 19, the earliest of the first fruits of your land shall you bring to the house of Hashem, your God, you shall not cook a tender young animal in its mother's milk. Again, we've heard this numerous times so far. Okay, so not a very long phrase, but Rashi seems to have a lot to say about this. And again, I want to point out to you that this Rashi's commentary was actually written as instructional material for children. So, it just goes to show you how much better educated our children were back in the 11th and 12th centuries than we're actually educating our children today. It's shameful. It's absolutely shameful. Okay, so anyway, and you've heard me complain about this before. With all that we're seeing going on out there and stuff like that, in the public schools sector, and when we start looking at our own yeshivas, if we're seeing this kind of stuff, this kind of craziness going on in the secular world, we should be paying doubly attention to our own yeshivot to make sure that they're staying on the right track, and that we're actually teaching children the way they should be taught. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, from having been a teacher in a liberal yeshiva, for lack of a better term, they called it an ivriya, that children were not being taught correctly. They were actually being taught to be ashamed of being Jewish. And I had a real issue with that, and after a couple of years, I just couldn't take it anymore, and I left. Okay, so now that I'm off my soapbox, let's go on with Rashi's commentary. The earliest of the first fruits of your land. The seventh year, too, falls under the obligation to offer the first fruits. That is why it is mentioned here also. The earliest of the first fruits of your land. How are they chosen? A man goes into his field. He sees a fig that has ripened. He wraps a reed around it as a sign and consecrates it as first fruits. First fruits come as an offering only from the 7 species stated in the Torah. A land of wheat and barley and so on and so forth. Dates and honey and so on and so forth. You shall not cook a tender young animal, which is a little different than we've heard before. You shall not seethe a kid in its own mother's milk, or cook a kid in its own mother's milk. Here we actually see it's actually talked about differently. And anytime we see something different in the Torah, where it's been talked about in one place in one manner and in another place another manner, tells us that there's something to be learned from this. So as we've typically seen in the Torah, we see, shall not cook a kid in its own mother's milk. Boom, done. Okay? Here we say, you shall not cook a tender young animal in its mother's milk. So let's see what Rashi has to say about that. A calf and a lamb are also included in the word gadi. For gadi means only tender offspring of any species, not necessarily of a goat. This can be proven from that which you find in several places in the Torah. Where the word gadim is written, and it is necessary to specify afterwards of goats. The gadi of goats, and 2 gadi of goats. This serves to teach you that wherever Gedi is stated without further qualification, calf and lamb are also meant. This verse is written in 3 places in the Torah, one referring to the prohibition against eating meat cooked in milk, one refers to the prohibition against deriving benefit from a mixture, and one for the prohibition against cooking the two together. Okay, so further commentary on it. Well, let's make sure that we got all the commentary here. Yeah, that was all the commentary. Okay, so this obligation to offer the first fruits, that is why it's mentioned here too. The further commentary says, see 34:26 below, Numbers 18:13, and Deuteronomy 26:1 through 11. The commentaries that disagree regarding the authenticity of this Rashi. Mizrahi and Gurarieh argue that it cannot be Rashi's work, for the 7th year is exempt from the obligation to bring the first fruits, because there are no first fruits. Now, the Torah tells us we have to celebrate the day. It does not tell us that we have to bring them on the 7th year. Okay, so moving on to the next commentary, which deals with the Bikurim. He shall wrap a reed around it as a sign of consecration, as it is as first fruits. The further commentary says this is from Bikurim 3:1. Rashi explains how one determines that the first fruits are, or what the first fruits are. This does not mean that the first fruit is actually have ripened. It means that the first fruit that the owner of the field or orchard notices. So once the blossom has fallen off and it actually starts to bud a fruit, then he goes out and he wraps a he wraps a reed around it as the first fruit. Rashi to Deuteronomy 26:2 says that the consecration refers to here is a verbal declaration. Okay, and we see this a lot in the Torah, where people will come and they will make a public declaration, or they will make a declaration of some type regarding what they're bringing for an offering or whatever. Okay, and we also do this ourselves. We do this on Yom Kippur. That's what the whole Kol Nidre service is about, is making this public declaration. Actually, several public declarations that we do during the Kol Nidre service. Okay. As it regards the first fruits are only 7 of the species in the Torah. Further commentary says Deuteronomy 8:8. The full verse reads, "And a land of wheat and barley and grapevines and figs and pomegranates, a land of oil-producing olives and date honey." Not bees honey, date honey. Okay. Going on, a land with wheat and the barley and etc. The further commentary says, also from Bikurim 1:3, Rashi mentions how this law is derived in his commentary to Deuteronomy 26:2. As it refers to this word Gedi, the word Gedi is almost universally translated kid. Or young goat. Moreover, according to Ibn Ezra, that is its only meaning. Rashi disagrees and adduces 3 verses below to prove that Gedi can also mean other baby animals besides kids. Okay, not a lot of chat going on in the chat room tonight. Make sure I didn't miss anybody. Nope, so far. Okay. Where it regards again, the Gedi of goats, from Genesis 27:9, the further commentary says, according to Ibn Ezra, the term Gedi is, you got it right here, use it. Gedi Ezim refers to very young kid who is still fully developed or fully dependent on its mother. It is a Gedi bound to Azim, i.e. the kid dependent on adult goats. However, the term Gedi stands by itself, refers to a kid that is still young and tender, but can nevertheless shift for itself. Okay. Where it regards the prohibition against eating meat cooked in milk, Olga has joined us. Okay. The further commentary says, although the keep forgetting I got this thing now. Yisur de'oratam, scriptural prohibition only involves eating meat cooked in milk. There is an Isur d'Rabbanan, rabbinical prohibition against eating meat with milk in any form. Okay. Let's see, the prohibition against deriving benefit from the mixture of meat and milk. The further commentary says, such as selling it to, or in the next case, cooking it for a non-Jew. Okay, so that brings us to verse 20. Behold, I send an angel before you to protect you on the way and to bring you to the place that I have prepared. Rashi goes on to say, behold, I send an angel. Here they were informed that they were destined to sin at the incident of the golden calf. And the Shekhinah would then say to them, for I will not ascend in your midst. That I have prepared. This means that I have prepared to give you. This is its simple meaning. Its midrashic interpretation is to the place which I have already prepared, my place, recognizable opposite it. This is one of the verses which says that the heavenly temple is directly aligned with the earthly temple. Okay, so with regard to the earthly temple, the further commentary says from Tanchuma, folio 18, folio 18. Should have an A or a B on it. Anyway, Rashi is concerned with explaining in what sense the place referred to by the verse has been prepared. According to its simple interpretation, the place that I have prepared is the land of Israel, Eretz Israel, which God has prepared in that he has reserved it for the nation of Israel. According to its midrashic interpretation, the place that I have prepared refers to the Beit HaMikdash. It has been prepared in the heavenly temple, as has already been set up as its base. So as it is above, so as it is below. Okay. Okay, so that belongs to the next one. So we're on to verse 21. Verse 21, beware of him. Hearken to his voice. Do not disobey him, for he will not forgive your transgression, for my name is with him. Rashi goes on to say here, do not disobey him. The word tamer is an expression of rebelling. Like the word yimrei in the phrase, who will disobey your word? For he will not forgive your rebellious sin. He is not accustomed to such forgiving, for he is of the group that does not sin. And furthermore, he will not forgive because he is only an emissary and does not but fulfill his mission. For my name is with him. This is connected to the beginning of the verse, beware of him, for my name is associated with him. Our rabbis have said that this is the angel Metatron, whose name is like the name of his master, in that the numerical value of Metatron, 314, equals that of Shaddai. Interesting. Okay, so the further commentary on this one said, with regards to expression of rebelliousness, Rashi concurs with the explanation of Targum Onkelos, who renders El Tamer as La Tasarev, do not refuse to accept his word. In this, he differs from the Talmud, from Tractate Sanhedrin, folio 38b, which interprets tamer as related to temura, exchanging or substituting. According to the Talmud, God is saying, do not substitute him, the angel, for me, concerning him, a god. Makes sense, right? But Rashi is basically saying that's not quite what it means. I believe, and others believe, that this is what it means. Okay. Yeah, do not refuse. Okay. As it regards for the, he's of the line that does not sin. Angels are free from the Yetzer Hara, evil inclination. And with its, he does nothing but fulfill his mission. From Tehuma 18, it is his mission to punish you when you are sinful. He has no authority to do anything else. Okay. As it regards, this is connected to the beginning of the verse. Beware of him, for my name is associated with him. From Tehuma 18, for my name is within him. Cannot be a reason for that which immediately precedes it. He will not forgive your transgression. On the contrary, his connection to the name of the merciful God would be cause for him to forgive. Rather, it is the reason for do not disobey him. Okay, verse 22. For my angel shall go before you and bring you to the Amorite and the Hittite and the Pezerite and the Canaanite and the Hivite and the Jebusite, and I will annihilate them. So I went ahead and I went a little too far. Let's back up here. 22, if you hearken to his voice and do all that he shall speak, then I shall be an enemy of your enemies, and I shall oppress your oppressors. Okay, not one to miss, right? Okay, so Rashi goes on to say, I shall oppress. This is to be understood as it is rendered by Targum Onkelos, I shall cause distress. The further commentary on that one says, this does not mean binding, as in Deuteronomy 14:25. That's all it says. Okay. No commentary on 23. And then we'll go right into 24. So we read 23. Well, I'll read it again. And for my angel shall go before you and bring you to the Amorite and the Hittite and the Pezerite and the Canaanite and the Hivite and the Jebusite, and I will annihilate them. No commentary. Going on, 24, you shall not prostrate yourselves to their gods, and you shall not worship them, and you shall not act according to their practices. Rather, you shall demolish them, and you shall smash their standing stones. Okay? Good lessons for Eretz Israel if they would only listen. Okay. Okay, so, and of all of that, all Rashi has to say, you shall demolish them, those gods. Their standing stone. This means stones that they stand on and so as to bow to them. Okay, so the further commentary that regards those gods, although the primordial suffix mem safit actually, there, in the word b'ma'asehim, like their acts above, refers to the idol worshippers. The mem, then, of taharsem, you shall demolish them, refers to the idols and not to those who are worshiping the idols, nor to the acts mentioned earlier in the verse. Okay, I'll go with that. No commentary on 25, so we'll go right from 25 to 26. You shall worship Adonai your God, and he shall bless your bread and your water, and I will remove illness from your midst. 26. There shall be no woman who loses her young, or is infertile in your land. I shall fill the number of your days. Okay, so Rashi's commentary on this one says, there shall be no woman who loses her young, if you will carry out my will. Pretty straightforward. A woman who loses her young, one who miscarries, or one who buries her child who were healthy at the time of birth, is called a woman who loses her young. Okay, and that's about all I got to say there. Okay, verse 27. I shall send my fear before you, and I shall confuse the entire people among whom you shall come. And I shall make all your enemies turn the back of their neck to you. Rashi goes on to say, quite a bit. I shall confuse. This has the same meaning as I shall confound. And it is rendered by Targum Onkelos, I shall confound, which supports his view. Similarly, any word with the root of whose verbal form doubles the final letter, such as the word discussion, whose root is mem. Okay, when it is conjuncted in the first person singular past tense. Hope you're taking notes on this. And in some place, it removes the repeated letter. We've seen that happen before. And instead of repeating it, puts a dagesh in the second root letter. And is vowelized with a milupum, a cholam. For example, the word hamoti of our verse is the same as the three-letter root as the word vachamim. Right, mem, right? Vachamim. Yep. Machamam. In the verse. And the wheel of his wagon will come apart. The word visaboti in the phrase and I turned, and in the same as has the root of the word visavav. In the phrase and he would make the rounds of Beth El, Gilgal, and Mizpah, and the word for I was poor, and it is the same as the root for dalu. In the phrase petered out and dried up. The word hakotech in the phrase I have etched you on my palms is the same as the root. That is the phrase for deceits of heart. The word in the phrase whom I have oppressed is the same as the root word of the phrase he oppressed the abandoned and the needy. And it just goes on with all these different... whoever translates the hamote as and I will put to death errs. For were it from the root of the word for death, it's he would not have a patach, and its mem would not take a dagesh, nor would it be vowelized with mepolah cholam. Rather, it would have been written vahemate, ahamate, like the word vahamata in the phrase, and that you will put this nation to death. For the tav in this form of the word for putting to death takes a dagesh because it takes the place of two tavs. One is the part of the root word. There is no form for the word death without a tav. And the other tav serves as part of the suffix, which indicates the first person singular past tense. Like the letter tav in I said, I sinned, and I did. Similarly, in I give. The second tav takes a dagesh, as it takes its place. It takes the place of two tavs, because the word should require three tavs. Two for the root, as the word tate in the phrase on the day Hashem gave, and the word matat or matat. Matat. In the phrase, it's a gift from God. And the third tav in vinatati, which is replaced by a dagesh, serves as part of its suffix. Okay. The back of his neck. Okay, move it on, please. For they will flee from you and turn the back of their neck toward you. Okay, and then the further commentary just has to go do all about this double letter at the end of the word, double tav, and so on and so forth. So we'll skip that, and we'll go on to verse 28. How does that sound? Okay. Actually, what we will do is we will go on to verse 28 when we return from our break. We'll take a break, and then we will return in 6, and we'll find out about send a zera. So stay tuned. We'll be back in 6.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
It's intermission time, folks, so hurry, hurry, hurry. Step right over to our refreshment center for the most extravagant array of refreshment goodies ever assembled under one roof. Enjoy breathtaking, mouth-watering goodies, everything from a snack to a delicious full meal. At our refreshment center, you'll find a large variety of goodies to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, or your sweet tooth. So hurry, hurry, hurry. Visit our refreshment center now. The show starts in 5 minutes. The show starts in 4 minutes. The show starts in 3 minutes. The show starts in 2 minutes. show starts in 1 minute. And now, on with the show.
And we are back. Okay, so David has joined us. Good to see you, David. David. Okay, so verse 28. Okay, now I've actually, this is very interesting here. So, I shall send the Zerah before you, and it will drive away the Hivite and the Canaanite and the Hittite from before you. Okay, now I've seen this word actually translated in the translated as hornets, which is not actually correct. And that's why I like the way this one is written, because it's a more authentic. Okay, you get more nuance out of the way that it's written here, because this insect, this Zerah, pretty notorious. So Rashi goes on to say the Zerah, a species of flying insect, it would strike them in their eyes and inject venom into them, and they would die. Doesn't sound like a hornet, okay? The Zerah did not cross the Yarden, and the Hittite and the Canaanite referred to in the verse are not among those who lived in Canaan, but are in the land of Sihon and Og, east of Yarden. Therefore, of all the 7 nations, the Torah here lists only these. And as far as for the Hivite nation mentioned here, although it lives on the other side of the Yarden and westward, our rabbis taught in Tractate Sota that the Zerah stood on the bank of the Yarden opposite the land of Canaan and shot venom at the Hivites on the opposite bank. A pretty nasty insect. Okay, so additional commentary, a species of flying insect. Rashi, Bechorot, Folio 7b describes the Zerah as a type of locust. Ibn Ezra explains that it is a debilitating disease relating to Zaraat. Rabbeinu Meyuchat says that it was a wasp. Wasp, a hornet, I've actually seen it actually referred to as both in the translation, but I like the way that he actually calls it the same thing that it's actually called in the text, Zerah. Okay. Let's see, since the bank, God promised a land of 7 Canaanite nations to the Israelites. And where it refers to Tractate Sota, folio 36a. The Talmud there cites other opinions regarding the range of the tzara. Okay, so if you want to look it up. So we are on to verse 29. I shall not drive them away from you in 1 year, lest the land will become desolate, and the beasts of the field will increase over you. Rashi goes on to say desolate, devoid of people. This would pose a problem for you because you are few and there are not among you enough people to fill the land. And they will increase over you. This means, and they will be too many for you. Okay, so really no further commentary on there. We'll go on to 30. Lamed. Little by little shall I drive them away from before you until you will become fruitful and make the land your heritage. Rashi goes on to say, until you will become fruitful. This means you will increase. It is related to the word for fruit, like the word peru in the phrase, be fruitful and increase. And that's about all it has to say. The only further commentary is a reference back to Genesis. Verse 31, I shall place your border from the sea of reeds until the sea of the Philistines, and from the wilderness until the river, for I shall deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hands, and you will drive them away from before you. Rashi goes on to say, I shall place. This word is an expression of putting. The tav in it takes a dagesh, because it takes the place of two tavs, which we've just discussed at great length just previously. For there is no form of the verb putting without a tav. And the other one is needed to serve as part of the suffix of the first person singular past tense, which I know you were just wondering about. Okay, until the river. Barat, the Euphrates. And you will drive them away. This means you shall drive them away. Really? Okay. Okay, so let's see. Further commentary on this has to do with the Euphrates. In this verse, the verse must refer to a specific river for it to have any meaning. It must be the Euphrates, for it has already been given as one of the boundaries of the land of Israel in Genesis 15:18. Okay. No commentary on 32, so we'll go from 32 to 33. 32, you shall not seal a covenant with them or with their gods. I find it unusual that Rashi would not have something to say on that, but there you go. Evidently, it's just, this is the plain meaning of the text. It doesn't need any explanation. Okay, so 33, which is, Lamed Gimel, Lag, such as Lag BaOmer, 33rd day of the Omer, right? 33, they shall not dwell in your land, lest they cause you to sin against me, in that you will worship their gods, which will be a hazard for you. And if you don't think so, just look at what's gone on in Israel, in the state of Israel, just recently, where the missionaries that were passing themselves off as Haredi Jews were finally thrown out of the community should be thrown out of the land completely because they were missionizing the Jews, which I don't understand. Why in the world would you even try that? If you say that you believe in the God of the Jews, why would you even do that? It just makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, because we know that if you steal from the king's treasury, it's not a good thing. The king will get his treasure back, and it will not go well for the thief either. Okay. So, you will drive them away. This means you should, the 33. In that you will worship their gods, which will be a hazard to you. See that these two examples of ki are used in the sense of asher, that or which. So too is the use in the sense of asher in the several places. This is an example of the word being used in the sense of Aleph Yud, which is one of the four meanings for the word that the word ki serves. We have also found the word used in the sense of asher in many places, such as the phrase, when you will offer a meal offering of first fruits, which is an obligation. Okay, so commentary on this one was this whole obligation. The Talmud from Tractate Gittin, folio 90a, teaches that ki can be used as a Hebrew equivalent for 4 different Aramaic words. Deha, Elam, Dilma, Im, E. Rashi says that this verse, ki, can be understood as asher, that or which, because that is one of its meaning, one of the meanings of Aleph Yud. Rashi cites the verse in Leviticus to provide that asher is one of the meanings for there, im, the Hebrew equivalent of means when, which is one of the meanings of asher. Rashi says that im of that verse means when, rather than its more common meaning if, because the offering related to in this verse is obligatory. The verse does not mean if you will offer, because the offering is not voluntary or conditional. It can only mean when you will offer, since im is one of the meanings of ki, can be used in the sense that one of the meanings of asher. The same holds true for ki, although in our verse, ki, it does not mean when, but is used in a different sense of asher. This is nonetheless considered an example of ki as e. Okay, you got all that? Okay. You may be tested on this, so there you go. Okay, so we're on to the final chapter of Mishpatim. And this is chapter 24, verse 1. To Moshe he said, go up to Hashem, you, Aharon, Nadav, Avihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and you shall prostrate yourselves from a distance. Rashi goes on to say, and to Moses he said, this passage was said before the 10 Commandments. Remember, people think that this thing is in, there's a lot of people, keep biting it, a lot of people who think that's chronological order and therefore it doesn't make sense, so it must be all made up and so on and so forth. And we know that the Torah is not written in chronological order. It is written in an order that makes sense. Okay, so this passage said before the Ten Commandments, on the 4th of Sivan, it was said to Moshe, go up to Hashem. And that's all it says. Okay, further commentary on this one regarding go up to Hashem, Mechilta B'Chodesh and Shabbat, folio 888. According to this opinion, this passage was said before the Ten Commandments were given because he explains the words of Hashem mentioned below, which Moshe related to the Israelites after his ascent, as referring to command given in preparation for the revelation at Sinai. Okay, verse 2. And Moshe shall approach by himself toward Hashem, but they shall not approach, and the people shall not go up with him. Rashi goes on to say, Moshe came and told, Moshe shall approach by himself to the fog. Okay. Verse 3, Moshe came and told the people all the words of Hashem and all the laws, and the entire people responded with one voice, and they said, all the words that Hashem has spoke, we will do. Rashi goes on to say, Moshe came and told the people on that same day all the words of Hashem. This refers to the command of separating and making a boundary, and all the laws, the 7 commandments which the sons of Noach, i.e. non-Jews, were commanded to observe. The Shabbat, honoring one's father and mother, and the laws of the red cow, and the civil laws which were given to them at Marah. Okay. Where it regards making the boundary, further commentary says that the command of separating from women above and making a boundary around the mountain beyond which the people could not cross. Okay, and it regards not just other references to Talmud and stuff. Verse 4. Moshe wrote all the words of Hashem, and he arose early in the morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain, the 12 standing stones for the 12 tribes of Israel. Rashi goes on to say, Moshe wrote the text of the Torah from Bereshit until the giving of the Torah, and he wrote the commandments, and they were that they were commanded at Marah. Okay. The further commentary on that one says, all the words of Hashem here refer to the book of the covenant mentioned in verse 7 below, for that is what Moshe wrote here. It does not have the same meaning as it had in the previous verse. And he arose early in the morning on the 5th of Sivan. The further commentary just references over to the Talmud. Verse 5, he sent the use of the children of Israel, and they brought up Olah offerings, and they slaughtered bulls to Hashem as peace offerings to Hashem. The use, the firstborn. Okay. Further commentary on that one says, Bamidbar Rabbah 4:8, Zavachim, folio 115b, Aharon and his descendants were not chosen as Kohanim until after the sin of the golden calf, which took place on the 17th of Tammuz. more than a month after the event described in the verse. So what do we learn from this is that originally the priest and the priesthood was going to be the providence of the firstborn. But because of the sin of the golden calf, then that was removed from the firstborn of Israel to the Kohanim because they stayed faithful. Okay, so this is, again, going back to Genesis, and the same thing with Melchizedek, where we learn either from the Talmud or the Agidam that when Abraham came, when Melchizedek came to Abraham after the whole thing of the kidnapping of Lot and the people and stuff like that, Melchizedek came to him. Now, the priesthood was supposed to go to Melchizedek and his descendants. However, because when he came to Abraham, he blessed Abraham first, and then he blessed God, the priesthood was taken away from him and was passed, at that point, was passed to the future, to the firstborn of Bnei Israel. Bnei Israel sinned with the golden calf. It was taken from them and passed on to the Kohanim. Okay. There we go. Okay, so verse 6. Moshe took half of the blood and placed it in basins, and half of the blood he sprinkled upon the altar. Rashi goes on to say, Moshe took half the blood. Who divided it in half? An angel came and divided it. Okay, so basins. In basins, 2 basins, one for half the blood of the Ola offering, and one for half of the blood of the peace offering, to sprinkle them on the people. Our rabbis learned from here that our ancestors entered the covenant through circumcision, immersion, and sprinkling blood. For there is never a sprinkling without an act of immersion preceding it. Okay, further commentary on this one goes back to the angel came and divided it. Vaikra Rabbah, chapter 6, verse 5. Had Moshe divided it, it would have been mentioned along with the other activities listed in the verse. There is another suggestion offered. Blood sprinkled upon the altar must be caught in the vessel used for sprinkling as it flows from the slaughtered animal's body. See Zavachim, folio 25.8. In verse 8 below, Rashi cites the Targum's opinion that the blood which Moshe put in the basins was sprinkled upon the altar. According to this opinion, then, this blood must have been caught in the basins and sprinkled from them onto the altar. Moshe thus must have caught half of the blood of each sacrifice in each of the basins as it flowed from the animals, since man is incapable of determining when exactly half of an animal's blood has flowed from its body. The division must have been made by an angel. Okay. As it regards the ancestors entered the covenant through circumcision. Further commentary says the circumcision took place in Mitzrayim. And the act of immersion preceding it. There's no sprinkling without an act of immersion. The further commentary says from Mechilta, the Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the material that Moshe is referred to as having written above the covenant indicates that the book contains the text of the covenant which God and Israel are entering in this passage. Okay. Let's check the time, make sure that we're running where we should be. Okay, so verse 7, he took the book of the covenant and read in earshot of the people, and they said, everything that Hashem has said, we will do and we will obey. Rashi goes on to say the book of the covenant, the text of the Torah. From Bereshit until the giving of the Torah, we already talked about that. I kind of went right into it. And the command that they were commanded at Marah, which I think I just repeated the whole thing here. Okay, so verse 8, Moshe took the blood and sprinkled it upon the people, and he said, behold, the blood of the covenant that Adonai sealed with you concerning all these matters. Rashi goes on to say, and he sprinkled it. This means sprinkling. Targum Onkelos renders it, and he sprinkled it on the altar to atone on behalf of the people. Okay, so as it regards this means sprinkling, the root can mean throwing, as in 8:9 above, or sprinkling, as in Ezekiel 36:25. Here it means sprinkling. And as it regards to atone on behalf of the people, the additional commentary says, according to Onkelos, the verse should have been rendered, and he sprinkled it on behalf of the people, rather than, and he sprinkled it on the people. According to Rashi, Moshe sprinkled this blood upon the people, while according to Onkelos, he sprinkled it upon the altar. Rashi to Rosh Hashanah, folio 31b, states explicitly that the sprinkling of our verse refers to it on the people, not on the altar. And that goes back to his previous statement that there is no sprinkling without immersion. You don't immerse the altar, you immerse the people. Okay. No commentary on verse 9, so we'll go from 9 to 10. Moshe and Aharon, Nadav and Avihu, the 70 elders of Israel, ascended. Verse 10, and they saw the God of Israel, and under his feet was that which had the form of a sapphire brick, and was like the appearance of the heavenly impurity. Rashi goes on to say here, and they saw the God of Israel. They looked and cast a glance, and they deserved death. But the Holy One, remember what God told Moshe, no man may look on me and live. But the Holy One, blessed is he, did not want to mar the rejoicing of the receiving of the Torah. And he waited to carry out the death penalty for Avdav and Avihu until the day of the inauguration of the Mishkan, and for the elders, the Mishkan, because, they brought the alien fire, right? And they snuffed it right then and there. And for the elders until the incident mentioned in the verse, and the people were like those who find a wicked pretext, etc. And the fire of Hashem burned among them and ate away at the edge of the camp. The term Biktre Hamahane, at the edge of the camp, is interpreted as among the officers who were in the camp. That is the elders. Okay. That which had the form of a sapphire brick. It was in front of him at the time of enslavement, in order to remember the pain of Israel, who were enslaved to enslaved in work of bricks. And it was like the appearance of the heavens in purity. Once they were redeemed, there was a light and gladness before him. And it was like the appearance of. This word is to be understood as it is rendered by Targum Onkelos, which means image. Impurity. This means clear and unsullied. Okay. Further commentary is just referencing back to Talmud and different tractates. So we're on to 11. And the nobles of the children of Israel, he did not send forth his hand. They viewed God, yet they ate and drank. Okay, and Rashi goes on to say, and the nobles of the children of Israel, they are Nadav, Avihu, and the elders. He did not send forth his hand. This implies that they were fit to have a hand set forth against them. They viewed God. They looked at him with undue familiarity while eating and drinking. Thus, the verse is interpreted in the Midrash Tanchuma, but Onkelos did not render it in this way. Atzile means great ones, i.e. noblemen. Like the word in the phrase, from among the nobles I call you, and like the word in the phrase, and he increased the spirit that was on him, and the word in the phrase, a width of 6 amot. Okay. And again, really no further commentary on that. We'll go on to 12. Hashem said to Moshe, ascend to me to the mountain and be there, and I shall give you the tablets of stone and the Torah and the commandments that I have written to instruct them. Rashi goes on to say, Hashem said to Moshe, after the giving of the Torah, ascend to me to the mountain and be there 40 days. The tablets of stone and the Torah and the commandments that I have written to instruct them. All 613 commandments are included in the 10 commandments. Now, if you want to see how that actually works, you can go to Maimonides. Imagine that, Maimonides. Maimonides, who explains, I think it's in the Guide for the Perplexed, how all of the commandments are connected to the 10. All 613 are connected to the 10. Okay. 630 commandments are included in the 10 commandments. Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon specified in the Azharot he composed which of the 613 commandments are connected to each of the 10 commandments. Okay. So with regard to the 10 commandments, further commentary says, Bamidbar Rabbah 13:16, the writing of the Torah as opposed to the 10 commandments was done by Moshe, not by God. If God says the Torah and the commandments that I have written, it implies that his writing of the 10 commandments includes the writing of the rest of the Torah. And as it regards to Rabbeinu Saadia Gaon, the head of the famous yeshiva of Pumbedisa, zealous opponent of Karaism, author of many works in all areas of Torah learning, including the philosophical work Emunot Ve'deot, as well as an Aramaic translation of the Pentateuch. And that will bring us up to 13, and that is where we will pick up next week. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natan b'tocheinu Baruch atah Adonai noten Torah. Okay, I want to thank everybody for being here this evening. I hope you are enjoying the Torah study, as we have been going for quite a while. And don't forget that Friday night at 8 p.m. Eastern is Kabbalat and Ma'ariv, the Shabbat service. And on Shabbat morning at 10 a.m. Eastern is Shacharit and Musaf. And then back again on Monday is Zeta Story Corner. And next Wednesday, we will be right back here with the Torah study at 8 p.m. I think that takes care of everything for now. Okay, so I want to thank you all for being here, and until the next time, we shall simply say, Leila Tov.